All right, this evening's topic is about COVID-19 and the new normal for children with special needs. And we're very happy to have with us two speakers, Dr. Sylvia Chu and Dr. Kenneth Poon. They'll be introduced by our moderator, Dr. Sean Goh. Dr. Goh is a research scientist and clinical psychologist at the Center for Research in Child Development, NIE-NTU. I shall now pass the session on to Dr. Goh. Over to you, Dr. Goh.
Hello, everybody. A very good evening to everybody out there. My name is Sean, and I'm the moderator for this evening's event. So we have two speakers today. Formally, our first speaker, Dr. Sylvia Chu, is a practicing pediatrician at the Department of Child Development, KK Hospital. Before that, she worked at the Department of Neonatal and Developmental Medicine at the Singapore General Hospital. Her interests are in family-centered care, working with parents, including parent-mediated intervention, and the integration and right siting of care and early intervention for children with developmental needs. Following from her, our second speaker, Dr. Kenneth Poon, is Associate Professor at the National Institute of Education, Nanyang Technological University, and Co-Center Director of the Center for Research in Child Development. He's trained as a clinical psychologist and early childhood special educator. His research mainly focuses on the life course studies of children with neurodevelopmental disorders and their families, the implications of these for policy, as well as the methods for assessing their needs. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the time over now to Dr. Sylvia Chu, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this. Adapting to the new normal. I think some people will find the term new normal quite irritating because I think it's been bandied around and nobody really knows what the new normal really is, but we've used it anyway. I'm going to go through what we know about COVID-19, at least in Singapore, what we might expect, and what are the strategies that we can use. And the strategies are the 3 R's: reassurance, routines and regulation, and possibly preparing for the possible changes ahead. So facts about COVID-19 in Singapore children. So far, less than 100 children. I think probably around 70 to 80 children have been infected. The symptoms have been mild. There's been no need for respiratory support or oxygen or ICU care in any of the children so far. And we have not had any cases of multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children so far as well. 50 cases were reported as of April 22nd. There have been a few cases in recent weeks after school has reopened, but they've been isolated except for this current 12th of July report on 2 students at Jurong West Secondary. In fact, the week before that, 25th of June, my colleagues at KK had published a paper saying that there's been no transmission of COVID-19 between children. So we don't know. We don't know if the one at Jurong West Secondary is actually a transmission between the 2 students or it's from other causes. But so far, in all the outbreaks so far, including the Fengshan PCF outbreak, there has been no transmission of the virus between children in the center. Okay, so that tells us a bit of how this virus behaves in children. We know that the transmission is via droplets, and usually the large droplets, which can contaminate surfaces and things. But there's been a recent 9th of July letter to WHO, which asked WHO not to ignore aerosol transmission. So if you look at this diagram, the big droplets will tell you why we want to keep social distancing. But if the droplets really do hang in the air over time, then that might explain some of the other problems like crowded places, poorly ventilated indoor spaces like choir practice rooms, gyms, nightclubs, places like that. So that's what we know so far. And again, things are changing quite a bit. So we don't know whether aerosol transmission is a problem, the small droplets, or it's just large droplets still. But we also know how we can protect ourselves. So there are the 3 W's: wear a mask, watch your distance, wash your hands, and also avoid the 3 C's: closed spaces with poor ventilation, crowded places with many people nearby, and close contact settings such as close range conversations. And that was from the Japanese government. Wearing a mask actually protects other people from your droplets and your aerosols. But if the other people also wear a mask, then you are protected from their aerosols and their droplets. So it's a bit of a I protect myself, I protect you, you protect me kind of situation. But we know that it does reduce airborne transmission. Outdoors is better than indoors, as recent times have shown, and good ventilation definitely helps. So there is a move to make the indoors more like the outdoors. So open windows, turn on the fan. When you're in a cab or a Grab, open the windows as well. Limit the duration of interactions with outsiders as well. Just wanted to congratulate everyone for having gone through this very challenging period. It was rapidly evolving with major changes along the way, from 7th of February when DORSCON Orange was announced to 7th of April when circuit breaker started. And to 1st of June, when phase 1 of circuit breaker lifting was instituted, and then 19th of June was phase 2 of circuit breaker. And I think from what the minister said, it's likely that phase 2 may last for an indefinite period. We don't know when phase 3 will start. What have our families gone through? Work from home, home-based learning, long hours at home with everybody in the family at home, limitations in where we can go, wearing of masks, safe distancing, challenging situations for some families. It's true that the experience has been very different for every family, and some families have thrived, right? Well, some have not. I think hopefully all this is also being documented, and we find different things that we may need to do in future for different families, and inequalities are also looked at. But we know for sure that COVID-19 is not going to go away really soon. We know that it is here to stay, and the world is kind of working out how to live with it now and how to adapt to it. And a lot of it is behavioral change. This was, I think, late June. Coronavirus may be here for much longer due to rapid mutations, because these rapid mutations may have implications for immunity being conferred on the persons who have had coronavirus, as well as for vaccine development. So there are some people who think that a vaccine may be available in a few months, perhaps early 2021. But there are many people who also believe that, who believe that a vaccine may never come, actually. So we don't know, and we wait. So the new normal, we don't really know what it is, but we know that it is a situation full of challenges, many of which are unpredictable, and accept that it will feel a little daunting at times. Even having just said that, we know that schools in Hong Kong, which were closed and opened, are being closed again 1 week ahead of their regular summer holidays because of a spike in cases in Hong Kong. So, strategies now to deal with the whole situation. I suppose the first strategy would be reassurance and communicating with our children. So reassuring ourselves as well as our children, getting good information and information from good, reliable sources. But be curious, what has your child heard? What does he or she think? Correct misconceptions and offer honest and realistic reassurance. So we know that there are a lot of truths about the coronavirus, the virus, the transmissibility, the possibility of being very sick. But we know that most people who have the virus are going to be okay. And that makes about 80%. 15% may need hospitalization, and then 5% may need ICU care. All right. So that's the truth, I think. There are also a lot of helpers, people who can help in this situation that we want to communicate to our children so that they don't think that we are all helpless with this. There are doctors, nurses, first responders, grocery workers, garbage truck drivers, cleaners, food delivery workers, teachers, safe distancing ambassadors, all who are playing a role in helping the situation. There are also a lot of people working on this disease, but it does take time. So development of effective therapies, vaccines, public health officials who are trying to do what we can. So there are also things that we can do, and I think this helps children. We know some things that work to protect us against the virus. So communicating with children using age-appropriate materials, books, comics, websites, videos, and there are many, many books out there now. Most of them are available online, and I'll be happy to share them with you later. Communication for development and disability appropriate ways. So supporting understanding, describing the virus and current situation in concrete language and terms, using social stories, visual supports, offering visual cues to clarify the passage of time, because it's been going on for months now, actually, right? Allowing opportunities for expression, including discussions, writing activities, journal writing, play, AAC, music, dance, yoga, and visual arts. So I think in Singapore, we had some children who, okay, sorry, this is the social story about COVID. The resources are from here. MOH, IMH also has some resources. And this was a girl who wrote about anxiety, drew about anxiety, her world at home versus her world outside. And I guess even with all that, take a moment each day to be truly present to the child or children, listen to your child's thoughts and concerns, enjoy some playtime with them, and also realize that this conversation is going to be a continuous one with anticipated twists and turns, and your child may have more questions and concerns as the situation evolves again. This was done, I think, by our local children, seeing COVID through art. Okay, the second strategy is routines. Juggling adult responsibilities is really, really difficult. I think working from home is not easy, especially with the children at home and trying to be a parent, a teacher, as well as an efficient worker, producing work as well. So we have to be realistic about how we can manage our day, striking a balance between all the competing demands. Providing structure for your family is helpful, but without being too ambitious, hopefully. Making adjustments, reaching out to others, and being kind to ourselves and being those around us. I think working from home is not the end of the conversation yet. I think there's a lot more to be said, a lot more to be talked about and discussed. How do we juggle parenting and working from home? I think a lot depends on the age and the development of the child. So the younger they are, the more direct attention is needed. And planning ahead is needed to get work done. So for infants, you know that they need you most of the time. You wear a papoose or, wear your child to work, but plan ahead to get the work done in very, very short spurts of time. Taking play breaks is good as well. Toddlers also need a lot of direct attention and they have a very short attention span. So plan a variety of activities. And someone has talked about having activity stations, so Lego blocks, dolls, kitchen artwork, and moving from station to station as their concentration wanes, and also doing some side-by-side work with you. So you do your tasks, but have him or her do his coloring, and you check in with them now and then, but you can do your task the rest of the time. School-age children and tweens and teens, family routines are probably important, keeping some structure, but give choices. And for tweens and teens who are older, perhaps set goals for them so that they can reach those goals without being too ordered by you and nagged. Why is routines and structure? Why do we say establish your daily or weekly routine? And why do we say build structure into your home and environment? Because it gives predictability and order and allows us to fall back onto familiar basic things. Anxiety is said to be often a response to uncertainty. So giving certainty, predictability, structure, order does give children and ourselves often something to fall back on and something to reassure ourselves with. So maintaining existing routines is important. Sleep-wake routines, eating, bathing, toileting routines. One thing that has come up a lot is physical exercise and physical activity. And then another thing that we could introduce, if we haven't introduced, is household helping. Building new routines is important because school stopped and work stopped and everything stopped. And transitioning off screens is something that we find difficult often. So using a visual timer, visual countdown system, because the children are on the screen for schoolwork for often 5 to 6 hours. And we need to build routines also into things like what time is mom and dad available. So we need to both maintain old routines, what we can, and build new routines according to the changes that have come about. So using visual schedules, I think everyone knows about these. These give predictability, makes transitions between activities easier, helping children deal with changes to routine, and encourages independence eventually. What's in a routine for a very young child, a very structured schedule, but for the older, it's just a framework. You can give choices, allows control, which is good for children, older children, and it also helps them to problem solve. It may include learning time, imaginative play, family time, physical exercise, as well as really free time. Helping the household, the motivation for children is that they get to be around their parents. And it teaches them to prioritize what is first and what is then. The need tools come before the want tools. And some things have a timestamp. Some things must be done by a certain time, right? Like homework. Advantages, you learn skills, the child learns skills, and they can increase their self-esteem because they are valued as helpers. And it could really help adults if they can actually do some of this helping. There's an order to, it teaches children that there's an order to things. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and there are finishing tasks. So for example, a meal, you prepare a meal, you eat a meal, and you clean up after a meal. So some of the things that Singapore children can do, possibly, and it depends on the age group, and the learning goals are different for the different age groups. So structure, fixed areas for certain routines. Our homes are small, so often our eating and learning areas are the same. Play and leisure may be in the living room, in the park downstairs, and then sleeping areas. Good if we could have quiet, decreased distractions such as televisions being on, good lighting, comfortable seating with your feet on the floor, flat on the floor for younger children, quiet, calm places to sleep in, dark, decreased toys and screen devices. Learning time, setting realistic expectations. So they say grade level, so primary 1 times 10 for attention span in minutes. So a primary 1 person would have 10 minutes. Primary 2, 20 minutes, for example. A quiet place, some do well with some heavy work before learning. Get your water, go to the toilet before you start. But schedule in some movement breaks. Split your learning if it's a big task into smaller chunks. It's always helpful to start with something the child is able to do first so that they are encouraged. They had to have interesting materials to engage the child if possible, and to follow up learning tasks with an enjoyable and activity or free time. What about screen time? I think that's been talked a lot about it. Unfortunately, screen time during this pandemic was the main way for young people to learn, to talk, and to play during the pandemic. But we want children to get the most out of using screens. It's not a great term because it fails to distinguish the different activities that you use the screen for. The advice is to use screen time strategically. And we recognize that there is intentional screen time. So you talk to your friends, you socialize, you learn. And I think people are saying that children can spend as long as 5 to 6 hours on school-related work. So if you go into the rules of 2 hours per day, you're going to go past it straight away, right, with just schoolwork. But there's also passive screen time, such as watching YouTube videos, video after video, TikTok, and people think this might be a waste of time for the brain. But I think we have to take into consideration things like free time and downtime for ourselves as well and for our children. Time management for older children. The older they get, life skills are important. So they have a 4H rule for teens, manage their health. So things like eating, exercising, sleeping, hygiene, must shower, must brush your teeth, homework, and then household chores. Because they can occupy themselves all day, but there may be things that we are not so keen on, right? One advice was to inspire them, set goals, let them go into deep dives during this period at home because they are unlikely to ever have a period like that again. Social media, need tools versus want tools again, intentional versus passives, and I think ultimately, does it affect the 4 H's is an important question to ask. So a lot of this advice was from this book, which is available online as well. Regulation, the last strategy. Coronavirus parenting. Be realistic about expectations. Work versus parent versus teacher is not easy. But I think focus on your relationship with your children versus academic learning. Children know if there are strains or anxieties at home. They can feel it and it reflects in their own function. And it's very hard for them to learn well if they're not feeling safe or loved. Your relationship is probably the precursor for everything else falling into place. It's not easy to be our best selves. We need to be extra conscious of our own eating well, sleeping well, and our own physical activity levels, because these impact our mood and our own ability to problem solve, stay calm, concentrate, and focus. So I think getting enough sleep is definitely important. I think some people have said, I feel like I'm a teacher, principal, cruise director, laundress, janitor, chef, servant, all at the same time. So prioritize, make sure everyone is safe and basic needs are met, and be realistic about what you and your children can realistically accomplish daily. So plan it in advance. And if you're feeling that you're yelling and throwing tantrums yourself, plan when you feel upset, give yourself some quiet time or time out in the bathroom perhaps. Be proactive about recharging. Schedule small amounts of time, 15 minutes, a source of calm, reading, exercise, creative project, yoga, whatever works for you. When you do lose your cool, maybe apologize, wait till everyone has calmed down, be honest with your kids. Tell them if you're tired, you're hungry, you're struggling, you're overwhelmed, you're sad yourself. Let them know that you will work hard to do better. Perhaps involve your kids in problem solving about what can be done differently next time, because they are learning from this as well. Share our mishaps, find the humor in it, because it's our job in the end to model appropriate behavior, which is part of co-regulation. So self-regulation is the ability to manage our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And in a time like this, it's very easy to not to be dysregulated, right? Things change, things take a turn for the worse very quickly. Being able to self-regulate helps us to remain calm and alert. It supports the capacity for us to respond rather than react to a situation. So co-regulation happens from infancy, and parents actually do this from very, very young. So for example, when you play with a child and you do peekaboo or jack in the box, and it's frightening to the child the first time, and the child might cry. But your responses to how you respond with the child actually helps him to learn how to regulate when he next meets this situation again, right? So he might cry the first time, but the second time he might actually because you say, hey, look, that's so funny, and so on, and he might not cry the next time, and he might laugh instead because you've laughed. So there's this strategy. I think I'm running out of time. So teach, model, practice, and praise. Practice is important. A lot of kids know the theory behind why you do certain things, but practice is needed for them to be able to respond in the way that you want them to respond or they want to respond. And praise is very important. Praising them when you see the desired behavior, or when you see that, telling them exactly what it is that they did that was good. So carefully observe your child, demonstrate self-regulation yourself. Difficulties will be encountered. Share these. Could this be a lesson? Show humor. Teach words to express thoughts and emotions. Make expectations clear. Play games with rules. And let children make choices and set goals themselves. These are calming skills, and I think you will know better what works. And of course, some of them need to be learned as well. For children with perhaps autism, and these activities may be scheduled as part of the routine. For example, rocking in a rocking chair, watching a preferred video clip, or for some children, even stimming might be helpful and part of the routine and schedule. This has been brought up a lot, physical activity. It is a proven strategy to reduce anxiety. Consider establishing and adding basic exercise routines for the family, and it can be a walk, a run, a cycle downstairs, going to the playground, or even an online or app-based workout. So preparing for change, giving advance warning, discussing the situation which is changing and evolving, talk about what is coming up, remind him or her of the positives. For example, going back to school, the friends, the familiar canteen foods, the school bus, a favorite teacher perhaps. Keep as much the same as possible, but keep some constants that he enjoys. Give choices for the older kids. Use visual schedules and social stories. And you might want to disrupt routine some weekends as a game or as role play and do a practice run. And communicate, listen to their questions, concerns, and answer their questions as much as you can. Changes in the family, I think we've all experienced. Why isn't grandma coming over anymore? Can we visit her? But we've used FaceTime and Zoom birthday parties to help all this. Connections are very important. So fostering connections from a distance, because the importance of human contact is very important. Going back to school was a big thing, and there are a lot of resources out there. This is from NUH. They have a very nice back to school pack. Wearing a mask can be frightening for some children. How can you help? How do you help embrace mask wearing? And even these special masks made for children with hearing impairment. Washing hands, safe distancing. There are social stories and schedules out there. This was interesting. This was from Peter Vermeulen. How do you cope with people not following rules? I think I had a girl who came to the clinic, and her mom said she's in secondary school actually. She said she's kind of the police in class, and she's writing down the names of all the people who are not wearing their mask properly. So I think this is one way of dealing with it. Most people follow rules, but some don't. And why don't they do that? Because people with autism sometimes can't imagine what's going on in another person's mind. Mental health is very important, so be aware of changing behaviors, changes in all the eating, sleeping patterns, increases in repetitive behaviors, worry, rumination, increased agitation, aggression, decreased self-care can be signs of anxiety in our children or even in ourselves. These are some hotlines and websites that are available locally. This was set up by NUH and Superhero Me as well, Lien Foundation. Life does go on. We have to do we have to be personally responsible, do the 3 Ws, avoid the 3 Cs. So takeaways: what works for one family or child may not work for another. We know our child or family best, and it's okay to try things out and see what works best for your child or your family. Be kind to yourself, your spouse, your child, your children, your family. We are in really unprecedented times. We are all learning. There will be good days and bad days. Share your load, schedule breaks, self-care, set realistic expectations. Routines and structure are helpful. There are basics which we can go back to. Work on self-regulation and prepare for the changes ahead and build resilience. But the big takeaway is eat well, sleep well, physical exercise and time in the sun every day. If we can, build family relationships with some fun along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chu. Thank you for sharing all the very, very important points for us to keep in mind. I think one of the takeaways that I get from this sharing is that COVID-19 will have an impact in many ways on the behavior of both children as well as families. And one of the aspects that we will be experiencing more broadly is this entire aspect of us spending more moments at home. So I think the wonderful thing about having a forerunner is that in many ways Dr. Chu has actually shared many of the same strategies that I will be talking about. So I will just be picking up on a few of them and to spend a little bit more time on them. So I think another thing that I also wanted to add is that the home environment is something that we will be spending a little bit more time on during the COVID-19 situation, but even outside this period of time, whenever that will occur, we will also be spending time at home during the weekends, during school vacations. So the strategies that I will be sharing will also be equally applicable during those periods over there. So I think the other point that I want to add about why this time at home is an important time for many of us as professionals, as well as for parents to consider, is that it helps to bridge this sense of learning. And let me try to explain how I think this bridge is very important. This must have been about 12 years ago, where I had this little project with teachers in special schools. And what we did was that we had the teachers go back to the homes of their students who have graduated. So they paid a home visit to their former students. And what went on as they came back to share was something which we did not expect. What we did not expect was that many of the children in special schools, and this is in the teacher's words, had regressed, meaning that they had actually stopped using many of the skills that they previously had used in the classrooms. And I think in many ways that got us and as an entire team to start thinking about now what went, why it happened, and what can we do differently. And for us, I think one of the biggest learning is that whatever that occurs in the classroom does not automatically get shared, does not get automatically applied to the home environment and beyond. And this is especially so for our students, for our children with more significant autism, or sometimes also for children with more significant forms of intellectual disabilities. So as a result, then one of the big take home that I personally learned, and many of the teachers with me, was that this entire aspect of thinking about how we need to bring these skills, this learning to the home environment is a very important one. So the focus then is stated in the title for today, which is making the time spent at home count. So I want to share three main ideas today. Okay, but before I talk about that, I want to start with a question for everyone to consider. So I've got a question over here, and I will be posting a poll just to get this sense. Oh, okay. I'm going to take that back because I've got some, not all the questions are there. But have a think about it yourself. What is the main role of a parent of a person with special needs? Would that be that of a co-therapist? Will the parent's role be one as a case manager where they try to see and coordinate what is happening between all the people who are supporting the child? Is the role one of a transition coordinator to help thinking about now how can I prepare my child for the next environment? Is the role of the parent that of an advocate, somebody who is going to be there to say, you know what, this is what my child needs. Can we find a way to support my child? Or is the parent's role that as a primary attachment figure? Okay, so I talked about a few, co-therapist or co-teacher, case manager, transition coordinator, advocate, or primary attachment figure. Give you 3 seconds just to have a think about that. And why I wanted to highlight these roles is because in many ways, these are all important roles that we very frequently engage. We normally very frequently ask parents to take some role in, and for a good reason. But for me, I think that if I were to ask what is the most important one, and I'm now putting on my hat as a parent, and as a person who has worked with parents for a while, I would say that actually at the end of the day, first of all, everything is important. But really, if I were to ask myself, what would if I can only choose one, what do I think is the most important? I would say that at the end of the day, we are a parent. We are the child's primary attachment figure. Everything else is a good to have, but really, if there's anything that we cannot not have, is the parent playing the primary role of a parent. And then I think secondarily, parents being the advocate, this person who's going to speak out for the sheer well-being of the child, for the child's interest. So I think these are two primary roles that I think parents should play. So why do I think that relationships are so important? I think Dr. Chu had talked about that this trust, this affiliation that forms from the very early days of childhood is a basic need of individuals. If we don't get that in place, we know that it will have, in particularly adverse circumstances, pretty long-term negative effects. So at the very core, this entire role of parent as the primary attachment figure is a very important one. All of us will need to know that there is someone we can count on. All of us will need to know that there is someone that we can trust. And in many ways, this serves as the foundation for subsequent relationships that we will be having later on in life. From a perspective of someone who has worked with children, I also, and adolescents as well, this relationship is also very important, because when there is this sense of trust, it will help you through, it will help the parents through the very difficult moments that all of us will experience through different points in life. I've seen how a very strong parent-child relationship can have a very important role during the child's adolescence as well. So what can be done to transform the relationship with the child? I want to be sharing 3 ideas that can make this home environment count. I think the first, and I will have a few slides later, you can take a look at that. I will, for those of you, I was told that this is recorded, but for those of you who need to, I will also tell you when there is that one slide that summarizes everything I've talked about, so you can either do a screenshot or take a photograph of that at that point in time. So, but there are 3. The first is that homes offer a good foundation for life, and I think that I've talked about that a little bit. The second is that I want to talk a lot more about the role of routines. Dr. Chu has talked about that. I think routines are important, and routines additionally also very importantly serve as the homeschool bridge, that you can be practicing the skills that we have learned in schools. And thirdly, the planning will further enhance the home environment. So let's look at the first. Homes offer a good foundation for life. So I've mentioned earlier that bonds that are built at home are foundational and are important for subsequent relationships. So how can we go about building these relationships with our children? The first, and you will find on the picture on the right that there's a little owl there. For me, that is always an acronym for me to think about how can we really understand a child, how can we understand a person more. OWL is actually an acronym for first, observe, wait, listen. So OWL then will I think at one level it's in it's in watching and seeing what the child does. Sometimes some of our children with special needs do not necessarily express themselves verbally, but we can also through observations know what they are thinking of, what do they like. So observing is a very powerful tool. A second aspect is this entire aspect of waiting. Very frequently for those of us as parents, especially Singaporean parents, we feel the urge to want to rush and help. What I've learned, particularly in the years in which I've been in the classrooms, is that whenever I want to do something, I have to tell myself to wait 2 seconds, wait 3 seconds, and see what the child is doing. As long as there is no danger for harm, wait and see. Because sometimes I find that the child actually has many good strategies that the child has up his or her sleeve. And the third is to listen. And I know that there are a good number of professionals listening in today as well. these two will work for the students in your class or in your therapy rooms. These two will work also for any child, actually. So this entire aspect of understanding, understanding the child's strengths, understanding the child's dislikes, also to understand the child's interest. With this itself, this will help us through the sense of interest and strengths, help us to, especially for children, people with special needs, think about now what are possibilities that we can have with that. The reality, I think if we one of the things I do is to read autobiographies of people with special needs that do well. One of the things that we very frequently see is that, well, many will succeed despite having special needs, but very few actually succeed curing themselves of the special needs. So really the lesson for me actually is that, and I think for all of us here, is that if we know the strengths, if we can build this, the strengths on the interests of the child, very frequently we will be able to find ways to have the child's strengths give the child future opportunities. I think in terms of dislikes as well, how can we go about avoiding triggers to difficult situations? The second aspect is praising and affirming the child. I think Dr. Chu too has talked about that. I just want to highlight two additional aspects. The first is that when we are giving praise, one of the things that we want to do is to move beyond just saying, "Oh, clever boy, you make me very happy," but to be descriptive. I mean, I think about that not only in terms of our children, but also in terms of us as employees. If my boss comes into my office and says, you know what, I noticed that you were very good at planning ahead for the event last week. So I think that that will tell me that, oh, this is something that is good. I want to do more of that. So likewise, when it comes to us praising children and affirming children, it is in being descriptive. There is a very helpful ratio called the 5:1 ratio. That is American, but I think there are good lessons in that. The 5:1 ratio basically is something that says that for every one corrective or for every one negative comments that we give, we should be actually having in the environment 5 additional positive and affirmative responses. For me itself, that is always a challenge. Particularly, I think as a parent, I want to be helping my children to do well. And for me, this is a constant reminder that children need to be affirmed, and this 5:1 ratio is a continual challenge to me. Finally, I think in terms of this first idea, we want to be enjoying time together as we spend time with their children. So the important thing is not to try to cram in too many things, particularly when we are home. I find that when I'm home, my guard is down, so I get more impatient. So what I've also learned over the years with my 2 children is that I try to savor the moment with my child. I try to go slow, not be totally ambitious with things, and really to build positive memories together. It's very much in line with this 5:1 ratio. We want to have, in order to develop this positive relationship, we want to be building this positive memories. So I think the takeaway then for us is to, as parents or as people who might be working in parents, is to see now what can we do to actually help facilitate very positive relationships between parents and their children. That's the first. The second is to be thinking about how routines at home offer an excellent opportunity to learn. So what are routines? Routines are, well, if you look at official definitions or dictionaries, sequence of actions which are regularly followed. Depending, but the routines that we do can be very different. For different families, very different for children with of different ages, because when we might be looking at very young infants and toddlers that might be having change routines, feeding routines. We can be looking at adults with special needs who can have routines in which they're participating in independently. So the power of routines is that it occurs every day. The power of routines is that it occurs in small steps. When I used to be working in the homes of children with autism, one of the things or when I was in the classroom, one of the things I did was that I spent a lot of time practicing things many times so that those who are slower at learning will have more opportunities to learn. What I learned later on is that, well, you very frequently can have this same practice effect if we practice them firstly on a regular basis so that it occurs during the routines that by very definition happens very frequently, like meal times, like changing, like cleaning up. So these are things that occurs very frequently. And if they are practiced in the right context, then the transfer of learning will be much faster, will be much easier. So the first thing then in understanding a routine is to be in tapping on this ability of the power of the routine is to first be intentional. What do I mean by being intentional? So I want to think about what skills we have that we want to be practicing in a specific routine. So I don't think that we should be dumping the entire child's IEPs into the entire day. But one of the things that I might want to do, especially if I'm starting, is to say, well, I'm going to start with one routine. And then with that one routine, I'm going to practice one skill. And then as long as I try to practice this skill in every time this routine is being executed, it takes place, then I find that we'll have enough practice. So for example, if the child is trying to tie the shoelaces, that will be practiced every time we have we go out, and then we'll have lace-up shoes. Or if my child's routine skill that we're only practicing is in describing in a in three sentences whatever is going on, then that is something that I might want to be implementing in every other meal time, for example. So if I do it in every other meal time, so I might have 2 practice sessions every day where the child will have that practice session put in. So if we were to do it twice a day, in 1 week, we'll have at least 14 times where the child can get to practice that. So then I think when we start to have more of these routines, once the child is doing it well in one routine, I'm going to add a new routine where I'm going to put in a second skill. So in doing this intentionally, we will start to build in more and more of this, what I call school home transfer of skills, or therapy home transfer of skills that we can be looking at. One aspect of transferring routines, of practicing skills in routines, is that it takes more time. So I think one important aspect is that we need to be able to slow down, to give time for these to occur. The third idea is to plan for success. I think Dr. Chu talked about it earlier, about how we want to be helping to facilitate these many skills by planning ahead, by structuring the day. And so likewise, for to be successful, I think one of the things that we can do also is, if we can, I do understand that it sometimes gets difficult if we have competing demands among different children. But I think we have talked about 2. First, enjoying time. Second, in terms of using the routines. And if you can do any more, then I'll say my third idea is to think about how can we plan ahead. Planning in terms of structuring the day. So, and I think Dr. Chu has shown a few examples of what it means to be structuring. So it can structuring the day is very important because it helps the child to know what to expect, when to expect, and sometimes who the child will be with, and when. So this will, like what she mentioned, provide this sense of predictability, this sense of structure that helps in many ways to reduce the level of anxiety. Because one of the things that happens together with many of these stay at home, not stay at home, but when we have the circuit breaker, is that there is sometimes this sense of anxiety and this sense of uncertainty. And so when we are able to actually build in the sense of structure, well, we may not know what happens next week, but we know that for this week, we are going to do 3 fun things. It's going to be on Monday, on Tuesday, and on Friday. And this is when it's going to happen. So by structuring the week, structuring the day, we are able to build in this structure that can actually help us, that will help the child or the person with special needs to have some degree of predictability in life. Another thing that I've indicated is also special activities that we can be planning. I've talked earlier about how we can use routines. Another thing that we can also do is to be planning special activities. So what you see in the picture below as well, planting, or we can be looking at, I think during the circuit breaker time, we have people who are growing bean sprouts. We can also have just sessions in which we're engaging in painting or whatever activities. So, but the important thing is to choose an activity that is preferred and then use that time again to either practice a skill or teach a new skill during that time as parents, we might be learning from teachers, or as teachers, we can be introducing to parents with materials. So this is thinking about now, if we are a professional, what can we do to help facilitate? I think the last point I want to highlight is that very frequently with some of these skills, particularly when our children, persons with special needs take a little longer to learn, is that we don't always get to see this rapid progress, and we sometimes get discouraged. Very frequently, it's not only us that gets discouraged, but also the person with special needs. So I think very importantly, what I will say is track the progress. How do we track progress? In this day and age, it's sometimes just take as easy as just taking, well, let's have the routine. I'm going to take my camera and do a short video of that, and I'm going to take a video of that again 1 month later or 2 months later if we don't see that much progress. And then what you will find is that as we start to take videotapes of the routines, we will start to see, well, what kind of changes are we observing? And so then that becomes a means for us to see the changes in a very real way, and also with that, take the time to celebrate the success. I think learning these skills for our people with special needs is not necessarily easy, and so we want to acknowledge that. So I think with the next slide, these are basically what I've talked about in summary. 3 ideas for making the home environment. So if you want a device that you want to take, you can do a screenshot here, or you can take a photograph over here. Okay, and I am going to move on. Give you another 5 more seconds before I move on to my last slide. And I want to just end off by saying that the COVID-19 is a challenge for many of us, as adults included. In many ways, it's a big storm. And whilst we wait for the sunny skies, I think be sure to look out for the rainbow. This rainbow for us is the home environment. It offers an excellent opportunity, not only in terms of learning, but I want to go back again to the key fundamental aspect, which is it offers a wonderful opportunity for us to know our children and to develop a long-lasting relationship with them. Thanks.
And we now swiftly move to the Q&A segment of this session. I think everybody can see 3 questions have been fielded so far. So we will answer these 3 now, and maybe 1 or 2 as time permits. First, I think I can see Dr. Poon reading, so we'll give him some time to absorb and digest, because these are important questions and we want great answers. So I could trouble Dr. Chu to perhaps maybe you want to summarize or elaborate your response to Mr. Zheng Ping Tei on intellectual disability and wearing masks.
Yeah, I guess your priority here might be just to get the child to wear the mask first before working on understanding. I guess it's the wrong way around in many ways, but I guess the urgent thing, especially if it's going back to school and so on, and going out of the house, is to wear a mask. So that one is usually getting familiar with the mask first, finding something that is acceptable to the person, to the child. So for example, letting them choose or, touch, feel, smell the mask first, finding a fabric mask especially that's comfortable and acceptable to the person. And you may want to, I think children are sometimes afraid of people wearing masks, especially in a hospital situation. So you may want to demonstrate wearing a mask on a stuffed toy or a doll or on a parent, and demonstrate taking off the mask, take pictures with it, so that the child sees that, hey, it's actually the parent underneath it. And you might want to practice wearing the mask for short periods at home, allowing breaks, and then maybe wearing it in a low demand environment, for example, a park where you can actually take it off, for example. And being successful and having success experiences is important, and being praised for wearing the mask. So those are good opportunities to do that when they do it at home and low demand environments, before you do it in a high demand environment, for example, school. I think that's about it, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Chu. Those are principles that I know, but somehow when you say it, it makes more sense now. Dr. Poon, over to you. Not sure which question you want to go for, but I think two are for you. Please take it away.
Okay, let's start with the third question by Jessica that was asking, how can teachers support children with special needs better in classrooms? I think with regards to that, the first I'll say, at least based on what I've shared today, the first is to first of all develop a positive relationship with the child, have the student trust you. Let me just share one story. There was once I was when I was still training to be a psychologist. I was in an acute psychiatry unit, and at that time I had a young man with autism who came in, and it was a tough time for him. This was in Singapore, because he was very stressed by being admitted, and he started hurting himself. So they were very worried about him, and they wanted to make sure that he wasn't hurting himself. So they wanted to send him for a scan of his head, EEG, which will actually involve wearing a net. And they were going to sedate him for the purpose. With him, because I was I had not gone in there as a special educator, but because I worked with children with autism before, quite a lot of time I spent in the unit was spent working with him. And we had this understanding and this trust with each other. And so at the end of the day, what I did was basically to read him a story. Because he was with someone whom he was comfortable with, someone that he trusted, and there was an activity to engage him. We actually did the entire procedure without the need for anything else. So I think the big piece that I took back from that is that this entire aspect of having this relationship of trust with your students is very important, because when your student trusts you, you'll find that you are able to do a lot more. And for me itself, when my students trust me a lot more, I find that I can push the boundaries a little bit more. And get them to do things that they sometimes might be anxious to try out on their own. So that's the first. The second is the same things that we've talked about that parents can do at home, predictability. So just keeping in mind that not everyone understands the class timetable the same way as the rest of the children in the class. So depending on the needs of our students in the class, the students with special needs in our class, we might sometimes find that, they may not understand. So with some students with special needs, we might need individualized schedules to give them a sense of, now what's going to happen next. This can sometimes take the form of a full day schedule in the class, or sometimes it's just a what's next schedule. So and not all my children, or not all children with special needs know how to read. I can use objects, I can use photographs, that helps them to know what is going to happen next, or what are the two activities that are going to happen next. I think the third thing is use same thing, use the power of routines. Very frequently, if I'm a teacher in a class, I may not have the time to do that one-to-one. But at the same time, if I know that, you know what, the parent is saying that the therapist might have taught the child something, or the child might be in an early intervention program elsewhere that that they've learned a few new skills. These are things that we can be practicing in classroom routines as well. So I think I'm hoping that this might be able to might be ways in which we can share. We can be applying some of the same routines and the same talks and the same ideas I've shared in classroom environments. With regards to the first question, Sean, do you want me to answer this as well?
If you could.
Sure. Okay. How can we support students with special needs for HBL? How can schools support students better? I have to say that this is an answer that we are still right in the middle of research in. Actually, we hope to be able to find. I hope to be able to share at some point in time with data that we are actually gathering from Singapore. But if I were to make an educated professional guess with this, how can we go about supporting this? How can we go about supporting our students? I think the first aspect is that from a parental standpoint, to recognize that very frequently when our schools go into home-based learning, teachers are caught unaware. So teachers too are scrambling. So as a result, teachers don't always manage to customize the activity for the student with special needs. So I think the first aspect then is to have a very good and clear open channel of communication between the parents and the school. Because what you will find is that, you know what, some teachers try. I mean, when I went into HBL, when the university went to HBL, I had to convert a 6-hour seminar into online. So we are all sense scrambling, and so for that reason, I can understand what teachers go through. So I think it's having that sense of communication with the parents. I think that's the first. The second is to I think be flexible and to not be afraid to make tweaks to what we are going to achieve. What we will find is that with HBL, some of the students with special needs may not be able to achieve some of what we are trying to do independently. In fact, during HBL, I was talking to a participant of my study, and she was saying that she was this is the parents. She was struggling so hard because all the HBL activities involved reading, and her this parent's daughter has dyslexia. So what it meant was that the parent actually has to sit with the parent to really the parent has to sit with the child in order to make sense of what is being read. So I think to be aware of some of these difficulties, and then to maybe say, well, maybe for this lesson, we can say that there is just this one aspect that we want to be covering, and so differentiating it slightly and then negotiating it, and then I think over time you'll find that you're more able to do that.